Welcome, everyone. Find yourself a seat. We will get going. It's 1:30. First of all, thank you for being here. This session is about how do you test your agent, how do you deploy, how do you monitor. So let's do a quick poll. How many of you are Salesforce admin? Let's do a hand raise. All right. How many of you are Salesforce developers? All right, last question. How many of you are responsible for kind of release management, CI/CD pipeline, and DevOps? You are at the right place. I think what we are going to show you guys, it will be very exciting, specifically if you are building on agents. And then how do you build them? How do you test them? How do you deploy them? So first of all, safe harbor slide, because we'll be talking about roadmap items. But more importantly, we will show you what exists today, because I'm guessing that's why you guys are here. So we'll do a couple of live demos across the life cycle, like Testing Center and DevOps pipeline, and so let's keep that in mind. Thank you again, and with that, let's get going. We'll do a quick intro. My name is Manjeet Singh. I'm PM, and
I'm Vivek Chawla, also product manager.
Yes, same. I'm John, product manager as well.
Thank you, guys. We'll take kind of three different sections in here. I'll take the role of Salesforce admin. And what I mean by that is, let's say my persona here is Rebecca. Rebecca is a Salesforce admin. And her company has bought Agentforce. And now they are at a spot where they started with one agent, and now they are building another one, like starting from service agent to marketing and sales. But here's the challenge. All right, I think my challenge slide is a little messed up, but basically when you build an agent, the big question is, are we ready to deploy into production? Because when you build out these agents, things may work, may not work. These are non-deterministic systems. You ask the same question, they might give you a different response. And that's where it becomes tricky, that how do you, once you have built this out, how do you kind of start testing? And I'll come back to this slide because this is super important where things start to come together. I'm sure you have played with Agent Builder, which is our low-code experience to build out agent. You may have seen a bunch of other demos. And then we'll go into Testing Center, and then another piece is once it's deployed, how do you look into what's happening into production? What kind of interactions and conversations people are having with your agents that you have put it out? So very quickly, looking into what's coming when it comes down to building agent. So this is on top of your agent builder or a supporting functionality on how do you quickly build out agents. So one product we have is Agent Creator. So what you do is you open up the creator and just tell, this is my role, and this is some of the jobs to be done in simple plain English, and it will give you a great draft of the agents, and you don't have to worry about starting everything from scratch. Another one is Agentforce AI Assist, and we have a bunch of demos around these capabilities, so I strongly recommend to go into the demo booths and then see, because here we want to dive more into testing, deployment, and kind of a DevOps pipeline. So let's go forward. The part that we are investing in is this full life cycle. How do we create? How do we test them? How do we batch test them? Unit testing versus batch testing, and how do we deploy them? So with that, we'll do a deep dive into Testing Center. One thing to understand is testing of agent is hard. And why it is hard is basically if you put them side by side, how you have been testing rest of the software, any kind of application in Salesforce, it's very deterministic. What I mean by that is you give one input, this is my output. But agents are not the same. They can be autonomous if you configure it that way. So then you want to look at all the intermediate steps, not just the input and output. Did it give me the response? Is the response complete? Is the response accurate? Did my response grounded into my data, right? The CRM data or your data cloud. So that's where this product is already GA'd, and it has a bunch of capabilities. And I'll not read to the slide. I'll demo it to you, that how easily you can now batch test, auto-create the data, and then feel confident into moving into production. Another good news, it's not just the one UI experience. We also released APIs that you can use them through CLI and kind of a Visual Studio, and then Vivek is going to kind of deep dive into that section. So let's look into this demo. So the problem statement in here is user is asking questions. They're reaching out to your wherever you put your agent, like website, and then you want to demystify this black box, right? Did the right topic classify? Did the right action was triggered or not? What was the context? Is it authenticated user or not? And then what about the cost? What about the latency of? So that's what all you need to know to drive the optimization and feel confident. So there's two main types of validations that we do from the logic standpoint. One of them is simple code-based eval, or you call them assertion, whether this matches with this, right? That my action classified or triggered the right action, or you call it a function calling. And then whenever you have the text data as an output, for example, your response, that's where you want to use LLM as a judge. So we have both technique into the framework, and that's what we are going to see in the demo. Okay? So what I'll do is I'll switch to the demo instance here. And the journey I'm taking is Rebecca, she built out this agent, and then the agent is ready for unit testing. So you always want to start in here and with some simple unit testing example. Based on what topics I have, on what action I have, you can start your conversation right here, just to make sure is agent even activated? Is it kind of ready to take my batch test scenario? And the good thing is, if you have used this, we have kind of the detailed tracer logs in between. You can see what's happening. So that always start there. Once you're like, OK, my couple of examples are working, now how can I test with 100 more? So that's where what you do is this batch test button that you see on the corner, this is a magic new button. This is what will take us into the testing center journey. So let's do that. As soon as I click into this, it takes me to the testing center. And here I can define 3 easy criteria. I just give it a name. So what I'll say is TDX demo. My agent is already selected. So that's all good. And I have these 2 ways. If I already have the data, I will upload it. Easy peasy. But that's very difficult. Creating data manually is where it takes a lot of effort. And that's where we have added this auto-generate test data generation capability. So now what we do is we take the entire agent metadata, how many topics it has, how many action it has, and then and not only that, also the instructions. And we take all of that into account, use AI to, hey, give us these many data examples here. So if I scroll down, I can put a number, 5, 10, 20, 100. So let's say to keep going faster here, I'll pick a lower number. I have some more flexibility. I can want to create it for all the topics or just one topic. And I'll go ahead and ask it to create the test cases for me. So now you are into this landing page, and what's happening is it's creating my test cases in here. So now what we did is we took the agent metadata, and then test cases are being created. Roughly, it takes about 5 seconds for each test case. So now you can do the math if you're requesting for 50 versus 100. So I expect this results to come back in a few seconds. And while we are waiting, I'll show you quickly, let's say, one of the previous run. All right, my screen flipped. So let me go back to the agent testing center. Here, all my results and every test data that we create, it's persisted, because you should be able to go back and see what was the testing, that test run we did yesterday or last week, and you should be able to compare as you are making changes. Super, super important. And if you go back in here, the job finished. This is the job we just submitted. My test cases are ready. I can review them. I can download them. If I'm not happy with some of them, I'll download. I'll make changes, bring that into CSV file, and run it again. Because this is the human in the loop, right? Because to verify sometime, that it missed the mark. And that's where it's an iterative process. And last thing you do is, once I'm happy with the test data, I will submit the job. So that's how easy we are making it specifically for admin. You guys, you don't even have to worry about all the APIs detail. We really hide and all the complexities behind the scene, and you will see more detail if you really love the API and kind of the CLI experience. But this is for anybody who is building agents, just like how simple it is to build an agent builder. Testing Center UI is just 3-step. Quick recap. You create your test data, review it, you submit your job, and last is review your results. And we should have the results up here quickly. So if I refresh, let's see what's happening. This is an async job. It runs in parallel, and it gets the results. And we will see the pass and fail criteria starts to populate into my UI very quickly in here. Okay? So let's do one thing. I'm looking at the clock. I'll come back to this screen. I'll cover 2 more pieces. Take a screenshot of this slide, because this is where we are going. If you want to understand what are the core building blocks of a agent testing, kind of the overall framework, the platform, and then what about the not a single turn testing, multi-turn testing? What about multi-modality, right? How do I test voice agent? What about the multi-agent when agent will start? So this is basically try to bucketize into these 6 group, and it's kind of inform our roadmap in a way, right? What metrics we are adding in the next March release. So I'll not go through in the detail. I'll highlight a couple of best practices because it's an iterative process. And what I tell is if a team can iterate fast, those are the teams that will end up building better agents, more accurate agents, more reliable agents. So if you start from in here, identify, once you have an agent, you look into how many topics do you have, and then you create test data, select the metrics, run through it, review the results. It's most important to see why a test case is pass and fail. So right now it's a manual process, and if I show you one more product that will get you excited is this one. So this is where every conversation that goes through agent, it gets tracked, and this dashboard, we are going to call it Agentforce Interaction Explorer. You can use it to see what's happening at the test time, but most importantly, what happened at the production time. Let's say it's been 1 week, I deployed it, and now I can see, let's say 2,000 conversation on this screenshot. What kind of conversations are happening? How many of them are going off topic? How many of them are kind of not finding the right knowledge articles? So it becomes super actionable, and then you can drill down into the traces as well. Benchmark, this is also we are going to invest more, because here we not just the LLM benchmark, but how a service agent versus a marketing agent versus a commerce agent works well in the real world scenario, like order management or booking your flight, or you name it, like depending on those scenarios. I'm rushing it fast because we have a lot to cover. Take a screenshot of this one as well. This is how a bunch of pieces come together. We already have a dashboard, and then once you have kind of this interaction explorer, I think it completes the full feedback loop. I've tested it. Now I can go to the Interaction Explorer and see how it is doing. All right, here's the roadmap. Another screenshot for you. Everything that is highlighted in green is available today for you, okay? The good news is we are on a monthly release cadence. So the bunch of things that you see in here, they will be available in end of March, which is basically this month. For example, context variable support, and then that will enable the testing of not only service agent, but also SDR and coach and other agents that you have. And then with that, I'll hand it off to Vivek, who will cover, you see the last box here? Developer experience, CLI, SDK. So Vivek, take us away.
All right, thank you. I'll just use the keyboard here. So I'm here to talk about the pro code aspect of testing and working with agents. So the persona here is Benjamin. Benjamin's a pro code developer at Coral Cloud Resorts. And when we were designing tools to really support Ben and the pro code experience, we really had these objectives. We wanted to minimize context switching. We wanted to simplify the builder workflows. And then we wanted to make it easy to streamline team collaboration. So what we've launched here at TDX are kind of 3 buckets of features, right? Agent creation, which I'm not going to talk much about in this segment because this is more focused on testing. Agent testing, and then agent interactions. The key bolded notes you'll see in those first 2 columns is this agent spec and agent test spec. That's important because we're actually doing something a little bit new. We're creating a new artifact when we work with some of these tools, which is a YAML spec file. And you'll see in my demo in just a moment why having this kind of extra artifact can be very helpful when trying to deal with the various metadata that goes with agents. Okay, so with that, I want to jump right into the demo. I'm going to slide that way twice. Okay, so here I am. I'm inside of Code Builder right now. Code Builder is basically a VS Code IDE straight out of a browser. It's got its own local environment. It's connected to whatever Salesforce orgs I want to connect to. And in this case, I'm connected to an org that has some agent tests in it. I'm also working within DevOps Center, so I've checked myself out into this WI001796 branch in Git. That's important because when I make changes here and fix things, I want to be able to put those back into my DevOps pipeline, which John will talk about a little bit later. And so by utilizing Git in this way, I get to participate with DevOps Center as well. So I was told that the guest experience agent test is failing. So I'm using VS Code and this extension to run that test. Now what's happening is, you'll see the test in a minute. Manjit explained that these tests are not, it's not binary, it's not exact, right? There's an LLM that's helping judge the outcomes. So for example, where's my mouse? This test itself has these two test cases. This first test case had the right topic match, had the right action match, but the test case was written to expect that the agent should ask for the guest's email address. But the reality is the agent asked for an email address and a membership number. So to me, that indicates an issue. I know that the agent should be asking for that membership number, so I actually want to change the test rather than change the agent for this one. If I go to the files, I can look at the specs folder. I'm going to open this spec for the guest experience agent test spec. You can see there's that expected outcome, and I think that's, like I said, that is wrong. I'm just going to check the timeline, and I can see that, yeah, it should have been this, and somebody had changed that. So I'm just going to fix this really quickly. Command C, whoops, and paste it in there. Now all the files are saved automatically when you're in Code Builder, so I didn't have to hit Command S to save this. But what I do need to do is I need to update the actual agent test metadata based on this spec. So to do that, I'm actually going to run this command, and I'm just making my life easier with some copy paste. What I'm saying is basically I want to create another agent test. I want to give it the API name, guest experience agent test. Same API name as the one that I just ran. When I execute this command, the CLI is going to ask, hey, there's already a test with that API name. Do you want to override it? I'm going to say yes. And then it's going to tell me, well, what spec do you want to use? And it's looking at my project for all the YAML files. I'm going to filter down by that because it's guest spec. Okay, cool. I do the guest spec. Now what the CLI just did is it created this, or updated this metadata file. So if I look at this metadata file, and actually let me do this. Let me start this test again. Now when I look at this metadata file, this is not as easy to work with locally as, oops, where's my spec? As the spec. You know, if you're working with metadata, you'll notice that like some things you have the single quotes have to be escaped. It's just harder for me personally to work with XML. Does anybody work directly with XML a lot? No? Would you rather work with YAML? Okay. You may not see, for those of you watching online, there were quite a few thumbs up. So I'll take that as a good thing. I did my text spec. So this is just easier to work with. Now if I look at the result, we can see that this did pass. So that one has been fixed. I can fix this other one where it's saying the agent should provide this, and it's like, oops. It looks like I'm having trouble. To me, that sounds like an Apex exception. For the sake of time, I'm just going to go right to the fix. I know that in the oops. I know that in the weather service class, this endpoint is incorrect. This should actually have an underscore. So I will save, or that will save automatically. I will deploy this source to the org. And now I'm going to actually use a different method of running the tests. I'm going to use the CLI instead of VS Code to rerun my tests. So here, I'm using the SF agent test run command. This command is basically taking the API name of a particular test I want to run, and then it's going to run that test. And here it's giving me results in human readable format. And that should have fixed, I'm sorry, that should have fixed the error, but it didn't. And so there may be some other configuration I need to do. But let's just say, imagine that had fixed the error. What's important about this is that because I can access the test through the CLI, I can integrate these agent tests within my CI/CD system. This is human readable output. This is great for me as a developer to look, but if I was doing this in CI, I'd probably use JSON. Now, it's important to note that this is all part of the same, testing platform that Manjit showed earlier. If I was to look at the guest experience agent test here, we can see that this test had just run. Yep, it's about 150. Oops, okay. Just trying to swipe over there. And we can see the pass and fail notifications. So what I noticed when coming here was that there's also this AI-generated agent test. So one of my low-code colleagues, they put together this set of agent tests using that AI generation feature that Manjit was talking about. These are a lot of tests that I wasn't aware of in the browser, or sorry, in my pro code environment. So I'm going to go and use the org browser. I'm going to look at the AI evaluation definition section, and look, there it is, GE agent test Rebecca. So I cannot see the icons because of our colors. We might have to change the colors on the next on the next run. So what I've just done is I've pulled down this new test definition. But again, this is that metadata XML. We already showed you how the YAML is a little bit easier to work with. The good news is that I don't have to start with YAML. I can actually build a YAML spec file based on an existing test. And so that is this command. I'm going to copy that, clear my terminal. Okay, why is this not? Okay, I'm not sure. Sorry about that.
Refresh.
The terminal is not working. Okay, let's try this again. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually generating a test spec from that AI evaluation definition XML that I just pulled down. If I command click this, there we go. This YAML file represents what was in that GE agent test from Rebecca. So we have this connection where I'm using spec files to generate tests. I can actually interact with the tests that my colleagues create by creating spec files from those agent tests. And finally, the last thing I'll show is that if I wanted to, I could interact directly with the agent. I can do SF agent preview. I have to pass it the agent preview user. And this is going to give me the chance to actually do a conversation preview locally within the IDE. So I want to preview that guest experience agent. I can save a transcript, and I can save the output. And then we will see the agent possibly not work. Hi, what is the weather like and I think it will still not work because for some reason it didn't get fixed. But at least I'm able to do more things within the ID instead of having to go back and forth and context switch with the different builder tools, which are great, by the way. The builder tools are wonderful, but being able to stay in the IDE as a pro code developer helps me focus on the things that I need to get done. So with that, the last thing that I might have done, assuming that this had been fixed, you know what I was going to do? I would have committed this, and then I would have pushed that commit up to my origin server, right? When I do that, it's going to trigger DevOps Center, and John is going to talk about that.
Yes, I am. All right, so that's the next job we have to do, which is to take the amazing work that Rebecca has been doing, Rebecca and Benjamin together,
Yep.
into ultimately our production environment, right? But that means DevOps, right? Let me introduce you to someone else. Raju, our release manager at Coral Cloud Resorts. So like many of you, is responsible for ensuring that in Coral Cloud Resorts, they follow a set of best practices. And he's been doing that by adopting our Salesforce ALM, or Application Lifecycle Management concept, which allows them to follow a set of best practices around planning, solutions, building, testing, releasing, ultimately monitoring the health of those solutions once they go live. And the primary tool that Raju has been using to deliver this is DevOps Center, our release management tool tightly integrated with source control. The question that Raju is asking himself right now is whether these principles of Salesforce ALM still apply in the world of Agentforce. And I will say they are actually more relevant than ever before. You still need single source of truth with source control. You still need a process to manage change and get approvals and so on. You still need a level of automation to ensure that you are able to accelerate delivering innovation back to your end users, right? So all of this is relevant. All of this is also relevant to bring in the other two groups here in the room, developers and admins together, to collaborate in these hybrid teams to deliver solutions using Agentforce, using our other existing tools, low code and pro code coming together to deliver high quality apps and trusted agents. This is all quite relevant, but while these principles are still relevant today, it does not mean that Salesforce's tools to support ALM should stay the same, and therefore we are evolving them. So starting with the tool that is available to all of our admins in our sandbox environments today, in the keynote we announced DX Inspector, which effectively allows you to, first of all, very easily identify an org as a sandbox org through this new shiny bar right at the top. It allows you to track all the changes that are happening in that sandbox in real time with this new panel that you see there. And it allows you to actually explore agent metadata once you create agents in that sandbox. But more importantly, it allows you to actually connect to DevOps Center and use the information that DevOps Center has on source control to see only those changes that have been uncommitted here in the DX Inspector, and make it a lot easier for you to understand which changes you actually need to commit back to the world of DevOps Center. Beyond that, we are going to keep expanding the DX Inspector, and we're going to ultimately add capabilities for you to create work items directly from the DX Inspector, also capabilities around migrating data and metadata in a single orchestration between orgs. All of that I'm sure you guys will enjoy. But beyond that, Raju is very keen in looking at our other tool that we're going to be talking about today, which is DevOps testing. So he's already quite familiar with DevOps Center, as I mentioned, our release management tool, tightly integrated with source control. As people and users interact with DevOps Center by, for instance, promoting an item from one org to the other, or maybe creating a review, there are DevOps events that take place, and those events present a perfect opportunity for us to do automated testing. So what we've done was to start by creating a new testing data model on top of DevOps Center and tightly integrated with it. And then, on top of that, to be able to fill in some of the blocks that you see there around tests and test suites and so on, we wanted to come up with a whole bunch of different testing tools that will be tightly integrated with DevOps testing, right? So we started with some of our own tools, Salesforce Code Analyzer, allowing developers to follow best practices in their code, Agentforce Testing Center. We're going to also add capabilities around Apex unit tests, scale tests, and so on. But more importantly, we have partners coming on board with us as well. We have a whole bunch of partners working with us. So AxleQ, Copado, Panaya, Provar, Quality Clouds, and Tricentis all provide commercial tools around testing that you can now deeply integrate into DevOps testing as well. And that ultimately means that within this realm of DevOps, you can have different test plans and test strategies for your DevOps projects, run those automated tests upon key DevOps events, have a unified view on how the tests execute across all of these different providers, and importantly, we have this concept of quality gates to ensure that only high-quality changes are allowed to be promoted throughout your DevOps pipeline. Otherwise, they will be automatically blocked, but this is all something that you can define within DevOps testing itself. DevOps testing is free for everyone and available next month as generally available. Now, beyond that, Raju, with DevOps testing, can now deliver trusted agents, right? We talked about this integration with Agentforce Testing Center to ensure that agents respond accurately to user input. We talked about Code Analyzer, that Code Analyzer is able to look at agent metadata and ensure that it follows best practices as well. But later this year, towards Reinforce, we're going to add the ability for you to use Apex unit tests and flow testing to ensure that your Apex actions and flow actions for agents also meet best practices as well. And again, our partners come on board with us to provide tools around end-to-end testing, governance, risk and compliance, and some will also provide capabilities to automatically fix issues using AI as well. All right, and that brings me to my demo, right? So you saw earlier that Benjamin would otherwise have committed stuff into DevOps Center, right?
Yep.
That means that we have a work item here that is pretty much ready for us to move on to the next step, which is for us to create a review, right? So just load some stuff here, but I'll go to DevOps Center here. I'll start the create review process. This in the backend means that we're creating a pull request and ultimately starting the process of getting our GitHub branch that you see right there at the bottom, ready to be merged ultimately into the next environment in our pipeline. So we're going to create a review, and you're going to see something new, which is a validation that's taking place after I click that button, that will tell me that tests are not passing. There you go, tests are not passing. So that means that DevOps testing is involved and DevOps testing is doing something. In fact, if I move on to my next screen here, in a minute or so, you'll see that what will happen automatically is that Code Analyzer, running as a GitHub action, will be invoked. There you go. Code Analyzer will be invoked and will start to run some tests against the Apex code that Vivek committed earlier, right? That it'll be scanning that code for best practice and so on. But that's only one type of test that we are running. If I go here, let me just quickly, while all the tests run, I'll walk you through DevOps testing itself. I already configured a whole bunch of different test providers here. So Agentforce Testing Center, Apex Unit Tests, Copilot Robotic Testing, Salesforce Code Analyzer, and so on, all configured here. And that means that through that configuration, I get access to a whole bunch of different test suites, which are basically groups of tests from all the various different providers. Some are assigned to particular environments, and so on. Ultimately, this means I have a ton of tests that I can potentially run against the changes that are flowing through DevOps. But what I really want is to be much more specific. So what I've done here, I have this tab called Stage Assignments, and what you see there is basically my DevOps pipeline, starting with my work items, then my 4 stages: integration, UAT, staging, and production. In the work item review stage, so basically the button I just clicked earlier, I have 3 test suites assigned, and those are basically a test suite for Salesforce Code Analyzer, one for Copilot Robotic Testing, and finally tests from Agentforce Testing Center itself. And I can see my results just by going to test suite execution groups. If I scroll down, I'll see that some tests might still be running. Actually, this one seems to have executed already, so let's click through and look at that. If I click in related, you'll see that I have these 3 test suites that automatically run. Again, the regression test suite for Copado, a security test suite from Salesforce Code Analyzer, and finally my test Coral Cloud Agents tests from Agentforce Testing Center. If I was to click through here, I'll be able to see my results. At a glance, I can see which tests have passed, which tests have failed. I'm also able to see right here at the top right that there was a quality gate rule involved that would require all the tests to pass. Otherwise, it would completely block that change from being potentially promoted to the next stage in my pipeline. It passed, everything went okay, so that's kind of our success scenario there. With that, let me go back and tell you where you can learn more about the stuff that we are doing here. So this QR code points to a post in the Trailblazer community where we're going to be updating with some links. And with that, we will have time for questions. Feel free to use that microphone over there. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed what we had to share today. And beyond that, I think there's an opportunity for you guys to provide feedback and apparently get free coffee as well. So scan that QR code if you're interested. Other than that, we have a few minutes for questions, so feel free to go there.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Bring back the QR code one more time.
Sorry?
Can you bring back the QR code for the presentation?
There you go.
I have a question. I have two questions. First one, what's the support for using this tooling with scratch orgs and unlock packages?
Great question. So with scratch orgs, Testing Center is supported in scratch orgs. Testing Center, by the way, is supported in sandboxes and scratch orgs. So you can run agent tests in scratch orgs. Now, unlocked packaging, it's not really quite fair to say that it supports it or not, because if you're building in a scratch org or an environment that you're going to build with packages, the agent tests aren't really required, like the Apex test would be like 75% code coverage in order to build the unlocked package. So as long as you can do scratch org testing, you should be able to build unlocked after you've passed your tests.
So I think you answered my second one, which was just like for Apex, we have minimum code coverage requirement. Are there any such requirements for prod?
There are currently
release?
no such requirements.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, everybody. Specifically to all the agents test center, is that going to impact our usage of credits on the implementation or on the running on the agent when we do like the manual testing or when we do the batches? And what is going to be the impact on the credits and how is the pricing going to work?
Right. I can take that. So partially yes, because what you're evaluating is we have some code-based eval, so then there is no impact, right? Because it's kind of a simple expression check.
Yeah.
Wherever you are testing, let's say calling the LLM to evaluate, let's say output response, great example.
Yeah.
You want to see like, hey, is output good enough? And then, so then it will consume your ER, Einstein request.
Okay, and another question related to that one. Specifically on I saw the feature to generate all of these test cases. You mentioned that is actually going to use Gen AI, and I assume that it's going to hit the LLM as well. It's going to do some stuff. Is that a cost associated to that as well, to generate?
Correct, yeah. So I think the way to see anything that uses LLM, and in the next release, we plan to add an estimator. So before you click, you will know that, hey, it will cost me $1, $5, whatever. I mean,
Gotcha.
depending on the job.
Okay, so every single time that we touch the LLM for whatever reason, it's going to generate some kind of cost.
Correct. Because
Gotcha.
this LLM metering is happening at the gateway level. So no matter it's your test or prod, and then, so, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, that's a great demo, I would say. I had one question specifically in terms of the auto-generated test cases.
Right.
Is there a concern in terms of actually generating false positive test cases? Ones where both the input or the output that was generated was actually true, but in reality it was false. For the small number of samples, I think those are easily human reviewable, but when you're generating about 2,000 test cases, like that would be a concern.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And then we are going to add automated data quality check. That's we are working on. Right now, you have to do it manually.
Yes.
But the good thing is on that screen, you can provide additional instruction to guide. Think of this as your user prompt.
Sure.
So you can say, hey, create 100 test cases for me and make sure out of 120 is negative test cases. So then the job will account that for you, and then whether you use it for diversity. But if you're more referring to is this data toxicity free or bias free and others? So those are the metrics that we are going to add.
Okay, so that's
I think it's important to note that once you use the AI to test, it's one of the reasons why we showed this in the demo. You want to be able to pull that, and it's easier to work with those test cases in the YAML file, and it's going to be something you'll want to iterate on. So being able to get that head start with the AI generated test cases, but then really look, and between your team refine what those test cases actually are. It's going to be an iterative process to get the perfect test cases.
Okay, thank you. I did see, just a follow-up question was, I did see a slide about the type of LLM that has been used. Is is that possible to actually check across different agents' performance as well, or is that a universal performance of the independent LLM?
So it's both actually. So you can select the agents that you have built,
Yeah.
and then you can say, hey, I want to test this with GPT 4.0 or versus Gemini 2.0.
Okay.
So it's across
Thank you.
LLMs as well.
Thank you so much.
I have a question about in your DevOps, loop.
Yeah.
After the agent goes in production, what is the process for managing and ensuring that the agent is performing well at scale? LLMs often have, model drift, things come up, right? There are knowledge gaps that maybe you haven't thought of before. Your documentation needs to be updated. So after an agent is running, so we've had agents running for over a year in our company. So we were one of the very first people to do it. And it needs constant monitoring. So how do you think about that? How many people should be staffed to do that part of the monitoring? And what is the process for monitoring the agent at scale? An agent that is maybe interacting with thousands of customers a day, generating hundreds of thousands of transcripts.
Okay.
How does that actually work?
Yeah, I'll tell you the ideal kind of how it should work, but what exists today from toolchain standpoint. So one is we have Agentforce guardrail, so that runs at the runtime,
Okay.
right? So you can define instructions like, hey, I build this agent, don't give medical advice or don't give tax filing advice, because your job is to build kind of service.
And so what happens when an agent does provide medical advice?
Yeah, so that's what
happens?
basically guardrail is. You can set the alert and you can inform your team to become more proactive.
Okay.
Or think of it as a rule set. You can say, hey, if this happens, just block. Don't do anything. Don't say it's off topic, I can't answer. Or you can let it pass, but inform the manager or you, so you can take a look.
And is that real time?
That's real time, yeah. It happens like within 2-3 seconds. Okay. The second is you also want to look at aggregated view. And that's where I was showing the interaction explorer, because that's, every morning you come up and there's like how many conversation we had, and then where they are going, in the sense that how many of them are successful, pass. So there's a bunch of metrics out of the box, and you can create more, because all of this data is coming into data cloud, and you can create more metrics report, you can set more trigger alerts. I think how many people do you need? I would say automate it as much as possible, the more alerts, and find the balance. Maybe in the beginning, you want to look at more sample data, and as you get confidence, you want to drill down the sample rate to a little less. So I think it's kind of finding the balance as those agents gets more stable.
Okay.
And let me just add, and more broadly, we're also adding more observability capabilities to the platform that will allow you to also track how agents are interacting, generally speaking, with their users, and all of that stuff as well.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Hey, thanks for the great presentation. I have a question related to testing. So right now we are focusing on the LLM testing basically.
Right.
Now if we have UI testing, let's say we have 1,000 test cases. So can we rely on this LLM testing, and can we reduce the quantum of regression UI testing specifically that we are doing on the Salesforce with this testing center? So what's your opinion basically I'm looking for?
So UI, do you mean that agent is integrated into your website?
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
kind of the scenario.
And then we are testing the UI aspect. Let's suppose
Right.
we are testing the account, opportunities,
Yeah.
contacts, and
Well,
things.
I think there might be an opportunity for you to review your regression test, but I would not say that. I mean, coming back to this slide here, right? Testing center and testing agents through LLM is part of the equation, right?
Yes.
You still need to maintain a broader portfolio of tests to ensure that your solution overall is trusted, right? And regression and end-to-end testing is still an important part of it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's important part, but then I'm trying to see where, the testing center fills the gap in. Definitely the LLM is one aspect,
Yeah.
but then I'm just trying to see where it can help in the UI.
Yeah, I think a certain experience that you have today move more into being agentic. I think gradually you'll see
Right.
less of a need for some additional tests, right?
Okay, last question. The test cases that you generated,
Yeah.
what is the reliability of that from the LLM? Like you click on the button on the generate test cases, and there are too many test cases got generated. What's the reliability? Do we need to, do a key second eye on that, or they are reliable, they are covering the full aspect of the code?
You always have to review manually. because and it will create the count, whatever if you, right? It's not like randomly go and create any number. So you specify, I want 10, 20, 100. And then you should always review the draft list before you hit test run. Because last thing you want to avoid is you're doing a lot of tests and your Einstein request is kind of getting consumed, right? So right now the recommendation is generate the test. You don't have to review each and every. I would just skim through it in the sense like, okay, how many of them are going and changing the CRM record? How many of them are about summarizations? So as long as you are a little bit of happy about the diversity and then the variations in them, I would say, and that shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes.
Any kind of metrics also generate, let's suppose the 10 test cases that got generated covering 100% code coverage, 50% code coverage, or the 20 test cases are covering more or less. So those kind of metrics are also generated anyway?
I would say not the code coverage. The way to think about this is your agent, right? How many topics does it have? How many actions does it have? So think of that standpoint, like the jobs to be done by the agent, and then how many ways people can ask the agent to do that job.
Yeah.
So I would say that's kind of the lens to look at.
I have talked with some of the folks on your team about this idea of getting code coverage estimations for the tests. So like an LLM would look at the test cases you have, look at the agent itself, and try to estimate, well, how much of the possible space of outcomes is actually being covered by these test cases.
Right.
And so
If we have that, we can then include it as a quality gate
Exactly.
in DevOps testing, and then
exactly.
just ensure or force you in a way to run through those metrics, right?
Yeah, no, good question, by the way. I think we should look into more this both angle, the topic and actions, and then also from the code standpoint.
Right.
Because behind the scene, you may have different kind of Apex classes and where it's kind of going, and it has like all is covered or not.
Yeah.
It gives
This is an exciting year because this is there's a whole new motion, right? Building the agents, testing the agents,
Right.
And so we're building a lot of this in real time with you. So the questions like this and feedback is really important. So we ask that you definitely keep giving it to us.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.